in particular, the awareness within. So this is something you can just play around with, like when you're lying down before you get up, to just see if you can bring your awareness from within to your whole body without labeling anything, just the mere knowing the feet and the ankles, just the whole body, from within. Does that make any sense to anybody? So hello to everybody who's joined us. Hi, Cecilia.
Good morning.
Katja, Marianne, Anthony, Robert, Joy. Of course, you've been here all along. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hi, Beth. Hi, Rebecca.
Good morning.
Hi, Tina, Lucas, Allie, Margaret. All right.
Hi, Venerable Tendron.
Hi, Margaret. Okay. I've become very fond of doing the scrunch the shoulders and then release before I sit, because I carry a lot of tightness through the shoulder. In fact, I have shoulder impingement at the moment. So when I do things like that, stop me. So what might be, well, we have to start again, don't we? Sometimes I get a little confused by this meditation and then starting a teaching. So I'll have to have my mind catch up to the schedule. So, but let's, those of you who have just joined us, try to recall the reason why you showed up, Those of you who are staying after the meditation, be aware of your motivation. And try to generate an intention to use your time well. Listening with an open mind. With a curious mind, with your wisdom. And with the wish that it not just benefit yourself, but that it will ripple out to benefit others. So let's recite, as is our habit, the 4 immeasurables. We can recite the Refuge Prayer for those who consider themselves Buddhist. So no need to recite it if it doesn't relate to you. But for those of us who are nourished by it, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Oops. So we've been looking at components of what His Holiness and Archbishop Desmond Tutu came up with as 8 pillars of joy. What qualities do we need to cultivate in order to be more present for the moments of joy that exist all the time? And so we've gone over things like perspective, our ability to step back and look at things from others' points of view, or just step back and look from the perspective of time, how things, don't seem so big after time, and how that can be helpful to reducing our suffering. Looking at humility, understanding that we can't fix it all, we don't know how to fix it all, that there are others who know more than us, that we know more than others, on different subjects. I mean, it's just, that it's all, we can, and there's good news about that. It means that we're not, holding the whole, weight of the earth on our shoulders. It's we can turn to others to hear their wisdom, to learn from their wisdom, to enjoy the beautiful result of people who are blessed with beautiful voices, or who can create meaningful or beautiful or heart-stopping artwork, that we can rely on our loved ones, our friends, and just think how amazing it is that we have support. That being interdependent, depending on others, is a wonderful thing. And then how humor really helps. If we can laugh at our own, thoughts that are a bit ridiculous, or just whatever it is, just humor. And sometimes how hooked we get. If you've ever been just seriously disappointed because you open the refrigerator and whatever it was you thought was going to be there isn't. And then we can chuckle, how we get all caught up in these moments. Because being able to be amused by little things can help us lighten even for big things, knowing that it too will be impermanent, it will change, and also that it can be a condition for cultivating our really good qualities inside, so we can be happy for the opportunity to be of help to others. And now and then there's acceptance, just being able to accept what's happened. Instead of expending a lot of energy thinking about how it shouldn't have happened, or if only it hadn't happened, or, those things. But just being able to say, oh, well, this is what it is. Now what? Now, how do I want to respond? And now we've reached the pillar of forgiveness. And that's not so easy. None of these are easy. But I was thinking about, what are some of our obstacles to being able to be comfortable in our bodies, be comfortable relaxing, being comfortable even taking the time to meditate, just choosing to do things that benefit our inner world. And how many people struggle to allow themselves this time. And it struck me that, probably a lack of forgiveness for the self is probably present for people. That somehow spending time within might give us some struggles, because whatever arises, we might feel at fault, or uncomfortable with the kinds of thinking we do, or just even like we're wasting our time that should be spent, working or cooking, because that's working, when you're doing it for others. What do y'all think? What does the word forgiveness bring up? Not stories, but just how does it feel in the body?
Morning, Venerable Tendron.
Hello.
Everybody, it's good to see you all. Boy, it's so amazing to me that I almost always hear exactly what I need to hear when I join you. So a couple of thoughts. Number one, the idea of really relating to the body. So what I'm finding is that so much of my, as I continue to learn, continue to open myself to teaching, I find so much of my emotions trapped in my body. It feels there's so much in my body, and I really didn't get that before in the teachings, like the really paying attention to the body, and particularly sometimes with Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching, he's always talking about the body, and paying attention to the body. So I'm just getting in touch with that really in a deeper manner. And so to have you address it today really touches me, and thank you for that. With respect to forgiveness too, this notion of self-forgiveness, what is it that I refuse to forgive myself for, and why? I'll never forget, years ago I had hired a personal trainer, and I just gone through a very emotional time in my life, and I kind of broke down during one of our workout sessions. Again, kind of going back to the body thing, right? Working out caused me to emotionally break down, which was really interesting in that instance. And he said, what's going on? And I said, I just can't seem to forgive myself for what I've done. And he literally got down on his knees with me, dragged me down to my knees with him, more accurately, placed his forehead against mine, and he said, do you think that God forgives you? And I'm just like burst into tears, and I said, yes. And he said, well, then who are you not to forgive yourself? and I thought, bravo, that was really accurate. But it goes, I think, to exactly what you're saying, and that is, who are we not to forgive ourselves, not to have the compassion that we wish for others for ourselves? And I really struggle with this notion at times. And I think more than anything,
this is not a new topic, is it? So
no, it is not.
Okay.
It's repeat. And sometimes I don't even forgive myself for that, for not getting it, right? until I really recognize that this is a habit of mine that I have established over decades. And
Yeah.
it's not going to change overnight.
And you're
that's
not
all I would add.
alone. You know, I mean, the reality is this is a common thing. And for you, it's very, you can, you know, it's quite manifest. You're aware of it now. For some, it's, they don't, you know, we don't see it, do we? And so it's really a matter of, and so sometimes that tension though that we hold in our body can be just merely this sense that we're wrong in some way, you know? And so we want to just be aware of that, you know, and be able to, when things bubble up, to, you know, address, you know, the story that we've been telling ourselves so that we can correct it, you know. So with forgiving ourselves and forgiving others, obviously, sometimes we feel like, oh, it's easier for me to forgive others than myself. But then we might have to ask ourselves, do we actually really know what forgiveness is? Are we really forgiving others? Or we're just using, you know, that condition as another way to support our lack of self-compassion? You know, it's sort of like, yeah, I can forgive you because I deserve to be hurt. So it's just kind of a vicious cycle. So forgiveness. So forgiveness is so important for being able to allow joy in our lives, because whether it's towards ourselves or others, holding, you know, the state of non-forgiveness blocks joy. You know, it's understanding that it is a condition, an opportunity for hatred, for resentment, and living with those minds frequently, having it be a basis for our interactions with ourselves or others, is a painful way to live. You know? So releasing the holding on to the past of it, whether it's ourselves or others, is an opportunity for us to suffer less. So letting go benefits ourselves. You know? Yes, Francesca.
Hi, Tendron. The thing about what's I'm thinking is, for me, is I can forgive if I know there's been ignorance, but if I know there's been like intent to harm, then I have a hard time with forgiveness. And can you talk about that?
Yeah, because this is interesting, isn't it? We think that it's that Buddhism agrees that intention matters, right? So, you know, that intending to harm and intending to help, both are stronger karmically, as, you know, actions, you know, where you've consciously chosen to do something that harms or helps, you know. But basically, one thing to keep in mind, Francesca, is this: one of the basic teachings of Buddhism is everybody's operating under ignorance, everyone. That we're trapped in samsara, cyclic existence, because we mistake how we exist. So that's our starting point. Every thought, every moment of body, speech, and mind, at its, you know, within that is this misunderstanding of how we exist. And one of the consequences of that is that we grasp at ourselves to exist in a way that it doesn't. And we think that we must take care of this all-important self to protect it, to give it what it wants, in order to have happiness and to avoid suffering. And we're mistaken that that's not actually an effective strategy. So this idea that, oh, you can forgive someone if it wasn't intentional is misunderstanding, this, it's like, sure, people might hurt us because they didn't know that was a sore subject or a button for us, sure. And we can look at that unintentional, that, oh, it's just because I didn't know that about you, or I didn't see you. Accidents happen. But this notion that the harm that we experience is coming from, the external object. Now I'm talking about experience, not the condition itself. The experience we create the cause for.
So in other words, if you're, we're just all inherently ignorant. So no matter if you have intention or non-intention, you're just coming from the same place, ignorance.
But it's certainly not inherent, because if it was inherent, we couldn't change it. That's the meaning of inherent. We don't have the nature of ignorance. Our ignorance is a misunderstanding. It's a fundamental confusion. We call it innate just because it's there from the first moment of awareness all the time. Since beginningless time, we've been mistaking, we have this dualistic, appearance. We apprehend a self and we immediately go to apprehending other. But our mistake is thinking that somehow they're not related. They're independent of each other, And so that we can take care of this self and those that we include in our circle of concern, my family, my friends, my partner, that's the little area. We can build a moat around it. That's the area that we need to take care of in order to have happiness and avoid suffering. And the Buddha said, sorry, we are all dependent arisings and we're all interconnected. There is no such thing as just my people, It's just a misperception. So we have to keep stepping back to have that bigger perspective of dependent arising. It doesn't mean that we change our feelings for our loved ones or anything like that. It's just that it gives us this opportunity to expand it further. Brian, yes, Carolina?
Yes. Let me think about how good. First of all, I got lost a little bit about when you were talking about the experience and the other word.
Right.
I have a situation that I have never experienced.
Well, can I explain that experience? Okay, so experience in Buddhism, feeling in Buddhism is reduced down to the experience of, and these words have a range to them, so pleasant, we have a range of being, super pleasant to, barely noticeable pleasant, unpleasant, which again can be this almost unnoticeable, satisfaction, to severe, suffering, devastating suffering, to neutral. So that's the experience. Okay. Everything else are other states of mind that we might have, like conceptions, like we might label it bad or good, or we might, assign blame, whatever. I mean, so those, but the experiences of it is how we experience. Do we experience it as pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? So just to help with that.
Mm-hmm. You were comparing to something else. I didn't pick up the second word.
As opposed to the external event, the conditions.
Okay.
So there are conditions for our experience of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, but they are not the same thing.
Okay.
So have you ever been, it's like you go to your favorite restaurant, you order your favorite dish, but in that, for whatever reason, that conditions are all the way you remember them, but you don't enjoy it for some reason. Maybe your mind is distracted by a fight you had at work. No, I make these things up, so you just don't experience the pleasantness because that condition does not contain pleasantness. Pleasantness, the experience of liking, is internal. And we have to, that's from our side.
Okay. Okay. So what I was going to, I'm in a position right now that I've never been in my life, where in this particular job, and I've been for many years now, several years, so I can say that intuitively, I think this is, I think, because I really don't want to know, because if I hear the answer, I think
all right, come on.
People are asked to do things that are unethical.
Okay.
But in order to catch new people, to bait them, to see if the new people will do.
So you think some of the business practices at your work are unethical?
They may. But the thing is, employees, older, I've not been asked.
But let's just get to the point. Yeah.
So I see it, I live it, if it's been done to me. And I have that turmoil because every time I have to say to myself, I have to forgive these people. We are all in a system that they're doing this. But I have this turmoil because I go with my ethical, what am I going to do? But the system itself, I'm not going to destroy a system. I just continue being who I am and doing it.
Okay,
but
so you're holding on to the fact you can't fix the system.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what we have to identify. What are we grasping?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's, yeah, but they're wrong. And I'm right. These kinds of things. So we need to know, and this is part of acceptance, that understanding that this is the way it is, and we may not be able to do anything about it. But we also may be able to do something about it. Accepting does not mean that we agree with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness is a deeper thing, because first we have to know what we're holding a grudge about, and then we have to really look at different, it's like different layers, because they're different things. Generally forgiveness is about seeing harm done to you or your children, where you are the recipient of some action that harms you, that's how you perceive it, So part of this process, and this is a big topic, so we can't just, take everybody's individual problems and solve them. That's not how this works.
Mm-hmm.
This is, it might work that way with a therapist, but even they don't always get to that. But, you know, but the Buddha's approach is more on this of really looking at our condition, all of us, all of living beings, all of humanity are operating under a misunderstanding of how we exist. And from that, self-grasping arises. From that, self-centeredness arises, because we really think if I don't take care of myself, no one else will. So sometimes we do things for our jobs that we may not be entirely comfortable with, that we think are wrong, but we do it because we need to eat. So we need that paycheck, you know? And then we're not willing to do something like report the business for doing unethical things that are illegal things, or whatever you can report about, or you're not, you know, you don't have the skills to be able to change the environment of the company. You know, so it's about, this is the acceptance part of really looking at what is as it is now and in the past. You know, we can't change the past, but then we can look at, do I want to hold on to the experience of suffering or turmoil, as you described it, you know, this turmoil that we have inside. And it's a choice. Doesn't feel like a choice, does it? Feels like, I can't help but feel this way, you know, and this is the process we have to deal with. So I'm going to share some screens. Let's see, which I think I may, okay, so I think this is important. Without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We are bound to the chains of bitterness, tied together, trapped. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us, that person will hold the keys to our happiness. That person will be our jailer. When we forgive, we take back control of our own fate and our feelings. We become our own liberator. But there's this is from the person who was the commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Council. So he's talking about people who are trying to find their way to forgive perpetrators of harm during apartheid in South Africa, during, you know, I mean, really horrible conditions, you know, which, you know, almost no one would disagree with their definition of harm or their experiences of harm. But understanding that our happiness, or, you know, our freedom from that bitterness or anger, or that, or even just indignation, you know, is up to us. It's an inner process. It's not, we can't change the condition. That has happened. We can change how we respond to it. Now we can recognize when it's the self that has to be forgiven. We can recognize, you know, it's like, let's see, you know, like I mentioned last week, you know, that there's a difference between forgiveness and allowing others wrongdoing. With wrong actions, we might have to take appropriate counteractions to stop it. But we don't have to choose to anger and hatred as a response to the person who did the wrong action. That can include ourselves. So we may have done things in the past that we hope never to repeat again. But we don't have to hate ourselves for having been mistaken or done something terrible, really hurtful, harmful. I've done some terrible things in my life, you know, and I don't want to repeat them. And I can either choose to hang on to my self-hatred and guilt, Or I could move on and become a nun and try to, transform my mind, which is the choice I made. Now, if I held on to this idea that there's no hope for me, or I should be punished for all eternity, I can make that happen. So apparently since beginningless time to this lifetime, I pretty much made that happen. So it's understanding that it may feel safe and comfortable to keep blaming ourselves, but if we want to really get out of this habit, we have to take a different step forward. But this does not mean we forget and continue to repeat actions that we think should be stopped. Doesn't mean that we allow people to run amok around the world, harming people and not doing something about it. It just means that we don't have to hate the people committing the wrong actions. Because we've been that person. So understanding that these actions come from a really wrong view of the self and how to take care of the self. So that we can be open to the possibility that that's not all there is. And then also, of course, when we're talking about forgiveness, is this the relationship you want to continue? If you don't forgive, where does that, can that experience change at all? So there steps. By the way, there's a book called, Desmond Tutu wrote another book called The Fourfold something of forgiveness. Maybe the Fourfold Art of Forgiveness. I don't think so. It could be that. Fourfold Steps. I don't know. It'll come to me. Anyway. So, let me go.
What about giving until it's unhealthy for yourself?
Okay.
Wanting to help so much, but in a sense where it's a barrier to yourself.
Right. I mean, we have to have self-care.
But what do you do when you want to help so much? Because, does that make sense?
This is again about acceptance and maybe self-forgiveness, depending on how you color in the story, is this idea of acceptance means there's only so much we can do. Not just because the other, whatever, the other is, could be, a group of people. There's a limit to what help they'll accept. There's also a limit to what we can do. So individuals have limits. Communities have limits. The globe has limits. And so acceptance of our limitations is part of this pillar of acceptance, of knowing, oh, I'm not a Buddha. I can't fix this. And guess what? If Buddhas could fix it, they would have. So even they can't fix it because we have limitations, and because what is out here, it reflects our ignorance and all that arises out of ignorance. That's what samsara is. It's a manifestation of our unskillful habits of mind. The book of forgiving, the fourfold. If you read chats while I teach, you'll see the information. Thanks, Tina. I can't do that. It's distracting, as you can tell. I saw it and I'm distracted. So, all right. So forgiveness is not inaction. I mean, it doesn't have to mean inaction. It's just, you know, as His Holiness says, it's not losing sight of the humanity of the person, but while responding to the wrong with clarity and firmness. Now, they've done research to see how people themselves respond. So when people are just asked to remember their grudges, and they have all those things on your body to, you know, measure stress. In this case, it was heart rate, facial muscles, and sweat glands. All of these stress indicators increased. But when they were asked to empathize with their offenders and to imagine forgiving them, their stress responses returned to normal. This is just imagining. So it shows you how forceful our mind is. Just even thinking about being, you know, harmed by someone, remembering the grudges we hold against people, make our whole body light up with stress. But then just pretending to, you know, imagining what would it be like to forgive them. This settles down. This is really helpful to remember. Because again, it shows you that our feeling of stress is from within. It's not an external condition. It is our mind responding or reacting to an external condition, because we can do it all in our heads without any event outside of us. You know, I mean, shoot, we can do it when we're watching a movie about, you know, a total fictional character. We can have these responses, usually because we can relate in some way. You know. Yes, Robert.
Hi, it's Veronica.
Oh, hi.
Listening to everything that you say, it makes me question if I even know how to forgive.
Right.
I mean, I don't think. I mean, my intention is to forgive, and I guess my emotions are dormant until the next time that something happens. So I don't even know if I've been able to forgive.
So we'll look at what some steps, you know, how to work with this idea of forgiveness. Just what is it? And as someone had put up earlier, you know, that it's a feeling of release, like, you know, that's how we feel it inside, right? So there's an experience in the body also when we're letting go of our grudges or our resentments or our hatred or our anger. So take a moment, you know, to think about just what it would mean to you if someone forgives you. You know, so think back to some moment when you did something. It doesn't have to be big, just something, and someone forgives you for it. What are the components of that to you? So just to try to imagine the situation, perhaps what you did, and then when you were told you were forgiven or you experienced forgiveness, so what are some of the components that come to mind? Or maybe, Nicole, why don't you split them up into groups? And we can just talk about, what are these components of forgiveness? What are our conceptions of forgiveness? I think we must be having some technical difficulty today. Are you back, Tali? Hi, Cecilia. Were you kicked out of the whole thing or just?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
No, I left for a little.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I was, because I keep seeing admit this person, admit that person. And I was wondering if we were having technical difficulties this morning. So. All righty. So now we can see, who didn't want to talk about forgiveness and they don't show back up. I'm teasing. I'm being my usual silly self. Okay. Mm-hmm. So does anybody have any helpful components of forgiveness or unhelpful? Or was this difficult? Or both?
Magically we appear. We reappear.
Can anybody share their components of forgiveness or not?
Venerable Tendron.
Hi, Anthony.
Yes, I was with Graciela and Brian. Very insightful discussion, and I learned so much, and personal stories shared. So I'm really thankful for them willing to talk with me. It seems that for me, what I first imagined was love was present, and then after conversing with Graciela and Brian, it really solidified that love being present on either side when we were talking about forgiveness, but also acceptance. Because sometimes if you don't accept what has happened, it's really hard to move forward. Yeah. And then finally, something that I realized it's not a component all the time, and I don't think you can rely on it being a component, is sort of like a recognition on the part of the person who had done the wrongdoing. Yeah. So for me, it's easier to forgive someone if they say they're sorry or they recognize what they've done. But that might not be the case, so you shouldn't necessarily rely on that happening to forgive others.
Okay. Thank you. Because to me, that's what's interesting about that is that highlights the fact that for us to forgive doesn't have to have anything to do with the other person. That we can choose to forgive and let go, even if the other, the person that we feel has done the harm or that we harmed has nothing to do with this, So it's, and this is very helpful to know when you're looking at the past. Things that there's no moving forward with the person because they're not here, But we can still see how we're trapped in the mind of non-forgiveness, of holding that grudge, and that's still harming us. So that it's worth our while to, embrace this mind of forgiveness, possibly. I mean, to look at it. Yes, Graziella.
I'd like to share just one effect of forgiveness. And for me, the effect is complete freedom.
So let's look at, yes, I agree. I know some of you will remember this from a previous discussion of this book, but I always find this really quite interesting. So one of the examples given is Anthony Ray Hitton's story. So he was released from death row after 30 years for a crime he didn't commit. And when he was asked if he was angry, he said, "If I'm angry and unforgiving, they will have taken the rest of my life. The world didn't give you your joy, and the world can't take it away. You can let people come into your life and destroy it, but I refuse to let anyone take my joy." So I think that's a very important aspect of this inner process of forgiveness, of, that it gives us the freedom to move beyond what's happened. So, and let me, are there any other things people want to share about the components of forgiveness or feeling forgiven?
We were talking about self-forgiveness and a little bit, and the importance of distinguishing between guilt and regret.
Yeah.
As a key component to self-forgiveness.
Yeah, because regret, I mean, when in Buddhism anyway, we encourage regret and this desire to not do it again. Regretting the harm we've done, and accepting that we've done it, and then being able to really work towards transforming our habits so that we won't go do it again, or to the best of our ability, we'll try to get better and better and better at not doing it, kind of thing. So, and that's certainly not about forgetting. So it's not about just forgetting and just moving on. It's about, really understanding that our response to things is within our choice. We can learn how to let go of the anger, or let go of the, the hurt, or let go of the idea that somehow we should have been perfect and never made a mistake, if it's about self-forgiveness, those kinds of things. But I think it's interesting, that, some of the qualities that they use, that they used or learned from the Truth and Reconciliation events, was that, there are these steps, and one is telling your story. And this is that part, whether it's, you need to forgive yourself or to forgive someone else, is that, perhaps you need to write it down. Tell a friend that you trust. That's always important. And this is not about reliving the feelings or all the stuff, but it's just about what happened. This is that acknowledgement. What you experienced, if you're the recipient of the harm, or a story about yourself where you acknowledge what happened, what your habits are. So they're, so I'm turning to the book to make, one of the things they bring up in this particular step, is that when you're trying to remember, that you step back in your mind, that distance we talk about, that perspective, so that you're not reliving the experience, but so that you can really describe how the event unfolded. You know, as if you were watching you in the past experiencing this. And then you want to be able to understand the feelings of that distant you. You know, kind of seeing it as his or her, as if you weren't that person. This gives you a little bit of distance to be able to manage it. You know, ask yourself, you know, why? Why did I have those feelings? Or why did he or she, you know, to keep the distance? And then ask yourself, will this situation affect this person 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And really asking yourself if you want to continue to carry this hurt or if you want freedom from it. So one of the things that is some of the components of granting forgiveness is recognizing the fallibility of human beings, that we make mistakes. We make big mistakes, we make little mistakes, we hurt each other. Being able to accept the limitations of imperfect beings is a component. And this, of course, applies to self as well as others.
Would you mind repeating that just one more time? I love what you said.
What did I say? Can we accept what did I say? The imperfectness of people? I hate it when I can't remember.
I love everything you're saying. That one thing was just so good, though. But keep going. I'm really enjoying this. Thank you.
Our shared humanity, and that we hurt each other. And can we accept the imperfection of human beings? Because we are limited. Can we see more, you know, the whole person rather than just the harm that was done? Understanding that they too have been hurt, they have friends and loved ones, all of this, the whole story. You know, instead of what our attachment and aversion does, which is just exaggerates the good stuff or the bad stuff. So in this case, it would be the bad stuff. We'd be we would just be so focused on that we forget the humanity of the person that did the action. And then, of course, you know, recognizing that people that we're in relationship with, not strangers or temporary opponents, but, you know, our family members, our friends, our coworkers, that we will be hurt more than once by them. That forgiving them one hurt does not mean that somehow shields you from future hurts. It just means that you can, you know, you're developing this capacity for forgiveness, for one thing, which will mean future hurts will be less hurtful. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this, you know, one of the things we hold on to, it's sort of like the way we hold on to anger, you know, oh, I have a right to be angry, as if being angry is a good place to be, as if that there's something in it for us. And that's the same thing with, you know, holding on to grudges, you know, wanting to stay mad or stay hurt, or, you know, that, or get revenge, as if we have a right to revenge. Because this really isn't about, it's about what does it do for you? If happiness and freedom from suffering is an inner process, holding grudges, resentment, hatred, the person it affects is you. We suffer. But
so in my group of two, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, in my group of two, we actually explored that a little bit. What's in it for us? What's in it for me if I do not forgive, right? There's a payoff, always a payoff, right? So if I'm angry, if I'm hurt, and I do not forgive, or I'm not able to forgive, I say I'm not able to forgive fully, what's the payoff for me? What am I holding on to? What am I grasping for? Is what I was looking for.
Sometimes it's just, you know, we have to look at that and also just look at the fact that we can make a habit of collecting harms done to us. Oh, poor me. Look at the hard life I've had. Look at how wounded I am. And hold that over the other person's head. Where people in relationships can do that. You know, we really want to look at that. Sometimes we hold on, you know, low self-esteem can be part of this too. We're holding on to a negative view of ourselves to give us permission not to try to rise to a challenge to do differently. Well, what if I was confident in myself? What if I did have self-love? What expectations would I have of myself then? You know, so we have to, you know, really kind of unfold some of this stuff, you know. But I think another key piece is this last step of choosing whether to renew the relationship or release it. You know, because forgiving, and it does not mean that we have to accept everything and continue on with a relationship. We can say, yes, I accept that this is what happened, and now I've decided not to continue this relationship. But we don't have to hold on to the grudge. We can just release the relationship. Or we can choose to renew it where you're starting again. Not like really starting over, but that you're not holding on to the past as a predictor of the future. Understanding that more mistakes will be made.
Venerable Tendron, there's a question.
Okay. Okay, we need you to unmute.
Okay, there you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Arpita and I'm from Michigan. And my plan was to move to Florida this year, which didn't happen because of COVID. So it is what it is. I've accepted it, you know, very graciously as a superior, you know, command or direction, whatever you may call it. But I just wanted to share quickly, like, about forgiveness. I was having a lot of issues with quite a few people actually in my life for the last 5 to 7 years. And it was really bogging me down, and I was starting to feel low energy. And then I started attending some meditation sessions here in Ann Arbor. What I was introduced to was the teachings of Eckhart Tolle that taught me how to live in the present moment. I realized I had to forgive the person first and then just bring all of my attention into the present moment. I felt that unforgiveness was lying either in my past or even in a resentment for my future. And a lot of my unhappiness was coming from clinging too much to what had happened to me in the past. And if I wasn't focusing on that after I had forgiven the person, I felt like I had actually truly forgiven them. And, it's just something I wanted to share.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
No, it's true. So the more we can be aware of what's happening, moment to moment, we can catch these things much sooner. We realize, ooh, I'm starting to collect resentments. I'm starting, and maybe that's not a habit that benefits me, So, really being able, to perhaps change our worldview a little bit, some of this, just separate from particular events, we can start looking at how do I view living beings, other people? Do I expect them to be perfect? And then we kind of really check up. We look at how we've responded to mistakes from people.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, welcome.
So this ability to recognize our belief system. Do we really understand that we are just imperfect beings? And do we accept that? Do we hold on to an expectation that this time, this person will get it right? Or I'm walking away forever, whatever. We really want to look. A lot of us hold our family members to be like that. We have ideas of what family members are supposed to feel about us. And if they don't, then, we're still, if we cling to it, we can't get anything from them because apparently they're not able to give us that we keep expecting. Are we still holding on to the hurts of childhood? So we want to, and I'm not saying there's something wrong with that there's something even really peculiar about holding, on to, our hurts of childhood. I think most of us have done it with different things, but it's more of just this understanding that we can be free of the suffering of the past if we start looking at, am I clinging to mistakes as if they should never have happened? Because that's not acceptance. Am I clinging to things as if, people should never make mistakes? Well, that's clinging to perfection and it doesn't exist. Am I clinging to the idea that, they should understand me? Whatever it is, we want to understand ourselves and what we're holding on to that is actually, like Ralph said, what's in it for us? Actually, maybe it's suffering and pain is in it for us. And if we can free ourselves from that, and we can see that, we all, we have stories of people who are able to forgive the most unbelievable things. We can't imagine being able to forgive, But if we look at the people who do forgive, wouldn't we rather be like that? So even thinking, when we see stories of horrible things that have happened, even thinking, I could never forgive that, is not a good habit to practice. Because there's nothing in it for you. Really understand, and again, remember that this does not mean forgetting or somehow condoning wrong actions.
Tendron?
Yeah.
What I was thinking also is being able to fully forgive is to try to put yourself in the shoes of the person that is wronging you. And, you know, trying to figure out where their motivation is coming from. And it's maybe not just to hurt you. It's just something that's going on in their life, and they're acting out. And it seems like they're harming you. And that's where you're thinking, oh, it's all about you. But it's really coming from them. Their sadness or their, you know, whatever their problems are, and they take it out on you.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so,
this is one of the assumptions we can make. Like earlier when you were asking, you know, about intention, you know, we can assume that if someone's harming us, that it's arising out of ignorance and suffering. You know, that we are not the cause of that. We can be a condition for it to arise, you know, but we don't even have to have some fancy understanding. It can simply be knowing that this result, this behavior is a response to suffering or ignorance, you know? So it's about this understanding the humanity of everyone, that everybody's got a story. Everybody is wounded. Everybody acts out because we don't understand how to attain peace of mind. We keep thinking it's out here, and we try to control things out here, and we try to take out our discomfort out here instead of digesting it within, instead of recognizing, oh, I'm feeling hurt, and go into attack mode. Because first we don't even recognize we've been hurt because we're not looking. We're in, you know, we've become insensitive, perhaps frightened of looking within. And that you know, that fear usually means we are holding ourselves to a standard that is not attainable. You know, we can't see our own mistakes because we think that's who we are. You know? So we also have to embrace our own humanity, our flawedness. Doesn't mean, you know, I mean, the Buddha said we have Buddha potential. We can become Buddhas, you know. But in the meantime, we have to accept that we have a lot of unfortunate habits that aren't skillful, they're not useful, and we haven't figured it out yet. And then we're not alone, are we? We're interacting with others who are in the same boat. You know? So we want to, you know, sometimes, you know, like especially with people we live with or family members, you know, we can, you know, something will happen. And then on our drive home or later that night, we think, you know, I am still holding on to that time when they said such and such, and I'm still holding it against them. So, you know, we want to be able to be aware of how we prolong our suffering so that we can interrupt it and let it go. You know, with the small stuff, you know, we still have to go through this process. Oh, I was hurt because, you know, in our minds of, you know, I really took it personally when they said this or that, you know, and I thought, you know, my brother or sister should have understood that that would be a sore spot for me. And clearly they're still doing it, so they still don't get it, you know. You know, But then we can accept that, oh, they have their own stories. They have their own ways of remembering, their own perspective. It isn't, it's not tidy, it's not neat, it's messy, you know. So time is kind of up for today. Any last burning questions? Yes. Hi, Beth.
Is wrong view like to blame for a lot of that? Like wrong view of cause and effect would be like a result of why we suffer in things like unforgiveness, because we're only seeing it how it affects me, which creates suffering, which is wrong because it's always about me, which always leads to suffering.
Yeah, exactly. That this is one of those unskillful habits we have. We forget to see things from a larger perspective. We only see things from our own perspective, you know? And so we exaggerate the importance of our perspective. And in any exaggeration is, guess what? Not true. So we're starting off with a mind that is not correct, you know? And then the fact that we hold ourselves to exist as independent, you know, over here, sort of separate from, you know, everybody else and everything, you know, and we forget that we're dependent and we're interdependent and we are connected and that everything has cause and effect. They're just, you know, the conditions have unbelievable, you know, uncountless causes that came to result in this condition, you know. So having this, you know, holding on to wrong ideas about cause and effect, or holding on to wrong ideas about what's important, or who's important, or what really, you know, that I have to control out here in order to be happy. That's not true, you know. So, thank goodness, because we can't control much out here, can we? You know, we might be able to choose the color we want to paint the walls, and guess what? That can turn out wrong too. You know? I mean, even the most simple things, you know, so we don't have a lot of control outside of our inner mind, our world of mind. And the mind, if we keep correcting these mistaken ideas, you know, will reflect, you know, right ideas. And this can help us so that we can really learn that we can be at peace within ourselves, even when the world is so difficult, like right now. The world is very difficult right now. And peace does not, inner peace does not mean not wanting to help others through these different crises that we have around the world. You know, and that we, you know, yes, of course, we're interdependent. You know, we should want to help and we should do what we can. And then we have to accept our limitations of what we can't do. You know. Okay, so let's read the dedication prayers. The idea behind this is that all our positive efforts, you know, like trying to work on our minds, you know, on a Sunday morning instead of, you know, I don't know, what else we can't do much during this virus. So, but instead of just, you know, eating bonbons and drinking coffee in bed, I don't know, you know, that we've decided to use this time, which is, you know, bound to benefit those around us more than doing that. So even though it sounds so good, but we want these positive, you know, potentials to ripen to benefit not just ourselves, but until they're just, we want them to keep ripening in a positive way until there are no suffering sentient beings at all, because that would be too great. All right, so we'll read the dedication prayers. So thank you all very much. Are there any announcements while I look for this page?
Yes, sure. We have Medicine Buddha Puja on Thursday evening. So please do join us for that, 7 to 8:30. That will be the same link as the Samsara Nirvana if you're already joining. And that is also on our calendar. And then also for next Sunday, this will be the same link as well. So newcomers, if you'd like to join us, just save this link. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, Medicine Buddha Puja is really, it's just a prayer practice where we're praying to benefit, or to eliminate all the harms. The Medicine Buddhas, when they were ordinary beings like ourselves or bodhisattvas, made lots and lots of prayers for different things. And so this is, so Medicine Buddha Puja is a trying to tap in to that enlightened energy of, this desire to help. And and that through our requesting help, we're creating the cause to be able to help and to receive help. So and it's all in English, it's not too foreign, but anyway, all right. So share screen. Da-da-da. Okay. So our merits are those positive potentials. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. So thank you. Good to see everybody. Good to see new people.